Welcome to the By Steve podcast.
What up, what up, what up? This is the By Steve podcast, and we are live and direct on this fine Thursday morning. As always, we are unedited, and this is just a little checkity check-in. It's going to be short, it's going to be punchy, and it's going to be reflective. It's going to be the 5 key things that I've found by doing podcasts. Like, what are my reflections? And while someone might say, Steve, you've had a podcast for 2 years. Your first episode was like nearly 2 years ago. Let's be honest. That first 12-month window was patchy, sporadic, and uninventive, uninformed, uninsightful, and I feel like it's only been this year. I turned the corner at December, January, and I was like, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to put time into this. And I think I did 5 episodes the whole of last year. We are now up to 32, I think. This might be number 32 or 33. So what have I found? What are the reflections that I've come across, but also what are the things that people have told me about the By Steve podcast? And I think like the most interesting thing or the most insightful thing that I've had, and that has been quite regularly, now I'm more consistent, is what is your podcast? Like, I use this as a space for me to practice to a degree, grow my speaking and my confidence to talk about difficult topics. And I guess the thing is now is like, it's what's the direction? What do I want from it? And a couple of people have said, like your Q&As are really good. Like you're talking about like emotions and relationships and blah, 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 blah. It's really, really good. Like your storytelling is amazing. But what is the trend that you want people to come back to you for? And that's really interesting. And I think the reality of that is like, with every episode, I find the direction of where this will go longer term. But it also just does give me things to think about. Obviously, there's a lot of data back of house. You can see the ones that people listen to. You can see the things that people share, and it gives me a real insight to what people prefer to listen to from me. So the first and most important thing is like, it's the biggest reflection is this: what do I want this to be longer term, and how do I consistently do more of those things and dilute out or eradicate the stuff that I just don't need to talk about, or the topics that are not for this platform. Obviously, like, I am a coach. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I label myself a new school podcaster, like at 30 episodes. I love my fashion. I love my sneakers. I love my lifestyle stuff. I champion mental health and all the things that come with that. But yeah, I guess like longer term, what do I want from this platform? And is there a space where there's 2 podcasts? Because one talks about basketball and fashion and shoes, and one talks about childhood trauma, relationships, and men's mental health. And that's the forever, I suppose, reflection now. It's like, what do I want from this? So that's the first thing. What is the next thing on that list? This, if you were to go back to episode number 1, and I think, and listen periodically, like let's say every 3 episodes, every 5 episodes, this is a tool to enable me to develop my communication with the outside world and become a space where I am happy to talk about all of the things that I want to talk about. And I think in the first instance, like, I was really nervous about talking about certain topics, talking freely, letting my mouth go a little bit and just being like, this is what I want to talk about and this is how I want these things to come across. And the reflection of that is now I feel like I've found my flow of how I talk, how I tell my stories, how I communicate with you guys, and I just continue to build on that. And it's about knowing the tone for the topic, and the boundaries that you can have in this space. I've only made one faux pas so far that I'm aware of, that I got pulled up on, and I'm happy with that. Like, it's a forever progress, right? Like, this is, I suppose, this is my baby. Like, I love doing this. Like, I love the consistency of it now. Like, I love being able to come on here, and I want to interview more people, and I just need to be better at that. I need to start getting people on and forming the dialogue of what those interviews look like, because I want them to be fun and I want them to be free, but I also want people to get something from them. And it's a case of, like, once you listen to these podcasts, what do you take from it, right? Like, and that kind of like leads into the next bit. Like, this podcast now merges into like my Instagram space, and I want people to take like a positive message from every single podcast, even if it's a funny one. Like, I have spoken about some really tough topics that have been a part of my life, and one of the reflections that it always comes back to is now, it's like when somebody messages me, whether it's text message, DM on Instagram, wherever that message comes from, and they're like, oh, I listened to the latest podcast, this is what I took from it. That means that I'm on the right track. So another reflection is like, how do you reach more people? How do you reach your community, your tribe, and give them the messages that they want and need on a, we'll say, day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, to enable them to be better? And whether that's through sharing my experiences or just like having time for me to think about like what people are struggling with and being able to help them with that, that's another aspect of that. How do you grow myself, but how do I also grow the community, the tribe, and those individuals to be better within themselves, within the moments that they need to be better, right? The next reflection, I think, is, this is a harder one, because it's like, how do you find your community? Like, this is the easy bit, right? The microphone and me and the questions is the easy bit now, having spent the time. But now it's like, how do you find your people? Like, where do you post your podcast? Like, where do you post the links? Who do you send them to? How do you get your people also to share this? Because I think, like, I have like a relatively solid listening base now for me. Like, I'm proud of like the 2025 subscribers, I've broke 1,000 listens, like, and I'm super happy about that. And someone might listen to this and be like, 25 subscribers, that's nothing. But now, how do I get those people, those 25 people, to share the podcast, to share the information, to share me, to broaden the community? And I think it's learning and teaching myself, that's proper English. It's teaching myself, or trying to enable the people around me to want to share it. So I continually now reflect and think about, as this moves forward as a project, like, what do I need to do to encourage people, without me asking them, to share this information? Or share the podcast, share the link. But like, this is a really good guy, like, you should talk to him, or you should listen to him, or you should ask him if he can come on the podcast. Like, how do I get to that point now? 30 episodes in, by the time I get to 50, I definitely want to have interviewed 4 or 5 people. And that's going to come around really, really quick. I find that I am able now just to do a podcast. I woke up this morning, I went to the gym, I trained, came back, sent some emails, and then I was like, right, time to do a podcast. And someone might say, you need more structure, Steve. Steve is not a structure guy. Steve is like an on the microphone, this is what we're going to talk about today. I don't write a script. I don't edit. I'm not at that point. Like, and maybe that's, that's a hurdle. And maybe that's something that's stopping the podcast moving forwards, and maybe that's another reflection to think about. But at this point in time, it's a open narrative, open dialogue, unedited conversation with myself and you guys, or the conversation with Scotty if he's on, or an interview with some of the people that have been on, or some of the people who will be on, and get into a point where people come to the page to learn and listen more. And those are like, this is like a 10-minute, like, out there reflection of the last year, nearly. Like, I want to podcast more. I want to be on podcasts. I want to explore the world of speaking online and publicly. And all of these things kind of like snowball into that. So again, what are the reflections? How do I get more people to listen? How do I get my people to listen? And you guys might know the answers to this, so let me know. It's a 12-minute, just under, little reflection of the last 12 months of consistent podcasting. I would love to hear some of your feedback on some of the podcasts. Please subscribe on Spotify. Please go to @by_Steve Foster at Instagram and give me a follow. Share this if you see the link on a social media platform. Send it to a friend. If you send it to a friend and comment on something on Instagram and tell me that you've shared it, I'm going to say give you a prize. I don't have any prizes. But I'll give you a shout out as well. I appreciate you all. I appreciate the listeners. We're pushing up to 12 minutes. I was going to try and keep this under 7. That didn't happen. I like to keep these things punchy. I have checked in. I have punched the time card. I'm going to check out. I got to get back to coaching. Love you all. Thanks for listening. And I will speak to you all soon. Bye, Steve Podcast out.
Welcome to the By Steve Podcast.